Yes, it is.
Hmm.
All right, 3 minutes and counting.
You got the link, right, Steph?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm probably going to drop out of Zoom pretty soon so I get the audio through the live feed.
Okay.
Okay.
But you got to stay there, Chuck, to send us questions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll hear it.
So, Steph, this part is not being recorded, or when it hits 7 is when it's going to record?
No, it's we've made the connection and it is recording now.
Okay.
But we'll be starting here in just a couple of minutes. Exact 1 minute and 33 seconds. Got my, oh, you can't see my mug because of my background. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you got your mug. All right. Well, got my mug. Get it right to you.
Nice. Okay. I believe we are live. It only seems that they can see my head though, so we'll work on that because that would not be any fun at all. Watching the live stream here. So welcome everyone to the Thunder Bay International Film Festival. My name is Stephanie Gondula and I am a maritime archaeologist with Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which is a part of NOAA's National Marine Sanctuary System. So there are sites all across the US. However, we are currently the only one in fresh water. And we are based in beautiful but freezing cold today, Alpena, Michigan. And we have 4,300 square miles of northwestern Lake Huron to protect. And what we're protecting are shipwrecks. We're going to talk a lot about shipwrecks tonight, but we estimate there's about 200 shipwrecks within sanctuary waters. And the very special thing is that lots and lots of people can visit these shipwrecks. You can snorkel these shipwrecks. In fact, I believe Jay and Ernie both have visited some of the shallow shipwrecks. And you can also dive very deep. We have some shipwrecks that are over 200 feet deep. And you don't even have to get wet to visit these shipwrecks. You can go on a glass bottom boat even. So, or experiencing them virtually, which is what we'll be talking about tonight. So without further ado, I do want to get to the meat of our topic tonight, which is all about the amazing program Diving with a Purpose. But first, just a few notes of housekeeping before I introduce our guests and you can hear from them. We are able to interact in real time and live with our audience out there. We'd love to hear where you're watching us from. Hopefully it's, very close or very far. You can be watching from anywhere around the world. So if you're watching from somewhere special, let us know in the chat. There is a chat option in the bottom right of your, or on the right-hand side of the screen there. So let us know where you're chiming in from, and if you have questions for Rachel, Ernie, and Jay, they'd love to hear from you. And so now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce three people who are very closely connected with Diving with a Purpose. I've had the opportunity to work in the field with two of them, and hope to get Rachel here diving in Thunder Bay, even though it's a little colder than she's used to. But I'd like to ask you all to introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from and your background with Diving with a Purpose. And why don't we start with Ernie? And Ernie, you are muted.
Practicing being quiet. My name's Ernie Franklin. I am in Washington, well, in Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. I am the educational coordinator and a lead instructor for Youth Diving with a Purpose. I've been involved with Diving with a Purpose for, I guess, about 11 years, and Youth Diving with a Purpose since its conception. We're going into our 8th year of activity now. So I'm excited to be here. I've had, like Stephanie says, I've had the opportunity to dive with Stephanie, Jay, and also Rachel. Rachel is one of our proteges. We're really proud of her. And that's about it for right now.
Okay, how about you, Jay?
Sorry?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for the Thunder Bay family, as well as the entire National Marine family, for having us at your film festival. I'm Jay Haigler, and I am a director, a board member, and lead instructor for the organization. I've been involved with the organization since 2007. And again, like Ernie, I've had the pleasure of diving with many wonderful people, Rachel included, you and a lot of our partners at throughout all of the sanctuary, most of the sanctuaries. So it's fun, and we are very happy to be here.
Yeah, my name is Rachel Stewart. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, currently living in cold Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm a student at the University of Wisconsin, studying environmental engineering, getting my PhD. And I got started with YDWP first. I was in the first cohort of YDWPers in 2013. And I've been to about 4 or 5, I think, YDWP, DWP missions. And yeah, like they have all said, I'm very happy to be here, glad to be a part of this and share my experiences.
Wonderful. I know we've got an audience out there that's very interested in the Diving with a Purpose program, and maybe particularly the youth program. How wonderful is it to inspire our youth and to also show that they can, dive under the waves and document shipwrecks. I certainly didn't know I could do that until I was, well, quite old, I would say. So Jay, why don't we, now that we know a little bit about you guys, why don't we tell our audience a little bit about the Diving with a Purpose program, maybe how it started and some of the specific examples about the projects that you guys do.
Okay, thank you. So we run 2 programs, a maritime archaeology field school and an ocean conservation program. And under that ocean conservation, we specifically focus on coral reef restoration. So I'll talk more about our field school, because this is how, this is the original program in which DWP started in 2005. So the field school, as an organization in this program, we actually provide training, documentation, and mission experiences in documenting submerged heritage resources, specifically shipwrecks, and all different types of shipwrecks from different eras. We teach in our field school, we teach the fundamentals of shipwreck documentation. It's a week-long field school, very, very intense. It also is a Professional Association of Diving Instructors, the dive agency, a specialty. So we actually teach the fundamentals of shipwreck documentation, and we actually do it in partnership with the National Marine Sanctuary. So we've been down to sanctuaries in Florida, in the Florida Keys, up in Thunder Bay, and we hope with our newest sanctuary, Mallows Bay, as an opportunity to be in the Ghost Fleet here. So, and the result of the field school in terms of that week long comes a digital map of that shipwreck as it lies onto the ocean floor. So that is what we do in our maritime archaeology field school, and so we're pretty happy and really proud about that.
That's wonderful. That's such a neat program. I love to see more and more people involved with and engaging with our shared cultural resources. Rachel, what was, maybe you said you were on a handful of these projects, 4 or 5. What would be your favorite one? And tell us a little bit about the work you did with this project. I sprung that on you.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, my first time was probably my favorite mission. And I'm not, well, I think the shipwreck that we were mapping that had already been mapped. We were just kind of redoing it. It was, yeah, it had already been done. And I think that one was probably my favorite one because it was just, I've only had been diving just for fun, just to look at coral. And then doing the DWP, I just was open up to like marine archaeology and that whole world of things. And it was just very different from what I had done before. So I would say the first one was, and then meeting and diving with a bunch of like-minded students like me was really fun, getting to know young divers because I hadn't met very many young divers. So
right. I think that's very important to inspire our youth to dive, for sure. Ernie.
That wreck was that first wreck was the outline wreck that we did. That was, matter of fact, that was the first one. I think that was the first YDWP. And we had the privilege of having some young people from around the world. We had young folks from Peru. We had young folks from Mozambique on that first one. Remember Kitsi? That was the first one for me. It was a great time. I love watching those kids have so much fun and get so much work done.
So Ernie, do you have to be a scuba diver to get involved with Diving with a Purpose?
It's preferable because there's a lot of diving involved, but we do have some students who do topside support. They maintain some of the equipment. They do a lot of the data collection for us. They help us with a lot of the logistics. But I think usually if we've got 1 or 2 that are not divers in the beginning, they get pretty itchy about it later on.
Yes, I imagine. So I'd like to ask you this, Jay, because I know you're so very passionate, like everyone on the panel tonight, but so very passionate about the DWP's work. Why is it important to you, the work of Diving with a Purpose, you personally?
Well, it's an opportunity to tell a human story, and particularly in the maritime archaeology area. The stories that we tell are important, and they're important for several reasons. Actually history, and then it helps explain the present, and actually that becomes a window to the future. So supporting living history is extremely important. So every time that I get into the water and I approach a wreck, the first things that I start to think is like, okay, what was occurring on this wreck at the time? Who was on it? Where did it come from? Where was it going to? Those type of things. That tells a story, and it's important for us to help tell that story and keep that story alive. And that's one of the reasons that DWP has a particular focus on the African diaspora in terms of charting and mapping shipwrecks that were involved in the global slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade. So telling that story is very important, and you become a steward of the ocean, but also a steward of history and culture.
Mm-hmm. Excellent answer, and I'm glad that you made that connection between when people work on these projects and really connect to these historic places and to these historic stories, that they really do become stewards. And that's what the film festival really tries hard to do, is visually, and compellingly show these stories so people can become stewards as well. And I meant to mention earlier, and I'll say it a few times, that there is an amazing collection of programs and films with the Diving with a Purpose themed program as a part of Film Festival. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you've got until January 31st to access those films for free on the same site where we're having the live stream. So do learn more, take the opportunity to learn more about Diving with a Purpose, and also explore those films that talk about the shipwrecks and the cultural heritage of the slave trade, for sure. Important history. I think it's really interesting, just personally, I think this is interesting, that both Jay and Rachel, I mean, all three of you are scientists. Ernie's a biologist, Jay and Rachel are engineers, and here you are studying history. So I'd like maybe Ernie and Rachel to both answer that. Like, I think this might be very interesting to students wondering, what are they going to do with their lives, and how important is it to pick that major? And here we have you that have taken different paths. So Ernie, tell us a little bit about that. You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be silent because I'm doing all of this mumbling and I'm agreeing, and I'm trying to keep a nod in my head while I'm talking, while you guys are talking, because I get really excited about my feeling and my motivation, and my thoughts go with the youth portion of DWP, which is Youth Diving with a Purpose. And our goal in there is to, like Jay said, is to inspire and promote stewardship of the ocean. The other thing is the training part of the program is like Jay's. It's a whole week long. It's very intense. We scrutinize the students a little bit harder than the adults do, because they have to prove that they're good students, and they've got a lot of background, they got references and those kinds of things. But the goal there is to get them trained, give them a taste, try to create a thirst for them to learn about their history, the effects that we have on the ocean and the environment. A lot of the students that we train, we want them to get a taste of the archaeology part of it. We want them to learn about the history, the basic documentations, but we also want them to really become stewards and develop in themselves another career path, another opportunity for them to do something different and make a positive contribution to society and to the planet. A lot of our students come out, not all of them turn out to be archaeologists, but you see, like Rachel, she's in the marine science. She's doing, what are you doing, Rachel? Water quality and
Wastewater treatment.
Yep. See, she's in there with the water, knowing that 75% of the earth is covered with water, and how important water is to the environment and our society, our survival, and the environment as a whole. So, I mean, you guys got to hear what Rachel's got to say. But that's my feeling, and that's my motivation. I'm a retired teacher. I've been teaching for almost 30 years. And I've finally gotten to a niche with these young people that I can come to class, and I know that everybody in class wants to be there and
Wow.
excited about it. And they open up like sponges, even the adolescents, the teenagers, the ones that have got this facade up about how their peer pressure and everything, that all gets broken down. And I've seen these young people break each other down to a point to where they're all equal and they're all striving to support each other and be the best that they can be with it.
That's wonderful. And Rachel, when you answer your question about connecting engineering and wastewater treatment to archaeology, what would you, I'd also like you to add what you might say to a young student, you know, maybe a middle school or junior high or even high school student who doesn't know what they want to do. What advice would you give them?
Be open to any and all experiences. Most experiences, just take advantage of all the opportunities that are placed in front of you. Go out and look for opportunities. Yeah, I would say that the connection it's a very roundabout connection, but for me, I think the documentation side of the archaeology, having to pay close attention to detail, is very similar to engineering, having to draw things, draw things to scale, take, accurate measurements of everything is very similar to engineering. Lots of similarities there. So I think that's why a lot of people who do like the archaeology tend to also be into the STEM fields and whatnot. And yeah, and I'm also very connected to the core restoration part of DWP. So that's kind of the science, water quality, it all played a part to me in my head. Somehow I got into the wastewater instead of like marine biology, but I just know that wherever I flush a toilet, that water is going to affect somewhere, some coral reef down the line. It's all connected. So
that's absolutely true. And that is important work that you're studying and doing. And thank you for that. And you guys have set such good examples of demonstrating how it is all connected, right? And all of these things do contribute, the skills that you have in your engineering, like you just said, do contribute to the work you're doing underwater. So I'd like to talk about partnerships now. And I mean, that's how we came to this event tonight, is a really great partnership with the National Marine Sanctuary System, specifically tonight with Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and Diving with a Purpose. So, I mean, that's how we get a lot of our documentation done. That's how we get a lot of programs. That's how we reach much wider, more diverse audiences. So, Jay, if you'd like to talk a little bit about how partnerships figure into the work that Diving with a Purpose does.
Yes, partnerships is a critical component of what we do. We are stronger together. So we have the great fortune to have some fantastic partnerships. Our very first partnership was with the National Park Service, Biscayne National Park, and that was the host of YDWP in 2013. And then a few years later, we actually formed a partnership in 2008, I do believe, with NOAA and the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And through that partnership, it has been fantastic. We have visited a lot of the marine sanctuaries, of course, Florida Keys, Thunder Bay. I've actually done some training in Olympia, Washington. Been to Channel Islands, and we were, as an organization, very, very involved with supporting the designation of the newest sanctuary, Mallows Bay, Potomac River, here in the Washington, D.C. area. So our partnerships really, really, really do bear very good fruit in terms of kind of its output, and we do collective outreach and presentation together. And most importantly, one of the good results of our partnership has been the actual mapping in maritime archaeology and in coral reef restoration, the actual restoring of the coral. So there are measurable outputs, or we call measurable results. And I think that Ernie and Rachel and anyone in DWP can tell you, it is a really great sense of accomplishment after you finish a field school or finish a mission. And at the end of the day, you have a great map, or you see in coral restoration, you really, as soon as you start to mount that coral in its place, all of a sudden fish start to come out, and all of a sudden it becomes an instant home. So that type of gratification of actually, accomplishing something. And it's only accomplished through the strength of our partnerships. And we really enjoy our partnership with the Office of all the Marine Sanctuaries.
You're mentioning sanctuaries and corals, and I just want to remind our viewing audience that you can see all of these different sites and critters in the over 70 films that we have available to watch at the Thunder Bay International Film Festival. We're just getting rolling. We've got another 10 days of films through the 31st, and so also this will be recorded if you'd like to share it with your friends and family after tonight. So we've talked about sanctuaries. This is probably I shouldn't ask this question, but I'm just gonna. What is your favorite National Marine Sanctuary?
Ernie, you better answer that one.
I've got two really. I'm sorry, I've got two, and for two different reasons. One is down in the Florida Keys, the Marine Sanctuary down there, because of the vibrant coral, especially the warm water. That's a beautiful place to dive. The second one is up there with you, Thunder Bay. I love diving up there too because of the shipwrecks, the pristine conditions that they are. The cold water, yeah, but still it's beautiful there. I love diving there.
So you, your group was here, I think, in 2010. Was that right? And documenting some shipwrecks then. So can you speak a little bit? I'll ask you this, just Jay. Can you speak a little bit about what shipwrecks look like in Thunder Bay compared to what they look like in the Florida Keys?
Oh wow!
Not that ours are better, but
no, that was a leading question, Stephanie. There's a tremendous difference between shipwrecks that are in fresh water and salt water. Just the environment, comparatively speaking. In Florida, shipwrecks are in salt water, so the organic, activity that occurs there, particularly shipwrecks that are wooden shipwrecks. So they tend to be not what we call scattered. You don't see them as complete. Where in Thunder Bay, the fresh water, the shipwrecks are pristine. The cold and fresh water provides an excellent environment for preservation of the submerged, of a submerged resource and those shipwrecks. So, we actually started doing work up in Thunder Bay, both with training as NOAA divers, as well as, in the NOAA diving program, as well as a nautical archaeology society training as well. So Tane and Jeff, it was a great experience. We documented the Grecian. We documented, I think, 2 or 3 other wrecks from 2010 to 2015. And then in 2015, along with Wayne Lasardi, we had the wonderful experience of documenting the aircraft of the Tuskegee Airmen in Port Huron. I know we'll talk a little bit about that later, but yes, it's a wonderful experience for in terms of shipwrecks and the comparison of the two between freshwater of Thunder Bay and the saltwater of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
I may have inadvertently started a battle in the chat because we've got, Sanctuary Superintendent in Florida Keys is better say Florida Keys, and Wayne Lusardi is saying you better say Thunder Bay. So sorry about that. Excellent answer though, Jay. They're both amazing protected areas for sure. So Rachel, I'd like to ask you another question about, and we touched on this a little bit, but what drove you to first get involved? We talked about your first experience with Diving with a Purpose, but how did you first get involved with them? And what would you recommend if someone is interested? How could they get involved?
Mm-hmm. I fortunately got involved because of just knowing the right person, Mr. Kenneth Stewart, who started is just like a spearhead for for a lot of things, and he was the spearhead for this youth diving with a purpose. And there's a large association called the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. I ended up hearing about them just on a vacation trip, and someone said, yeah, there's a whole organization dedicated to Black scuba divers. I went home, did some research, found out about the Tennessee Aquatic Project, which is sort of a part of NABS. And Mr. Ken Stewart is over that program. I joined that. And then it just worked out, the timing worked out that I was getting certified. In the same year that I was getting certified, they were starting the Youth Diving with a Purpose program. And so I will say he just kind of threw me into it. Fortunately, I was very definitely down to do it and looking forward to do something else, like doing something underwater with my hands. I like to do things. So it was nice to switch up, be a part of something where I get to switch up just looking at things and being able to actually, like Jay said, look at a finished map after a week of working and diving. So that's my way, how I got into it. Anyone who is looking to get into the DWP or YDWP can look at our website. Someone let me know if I'm saying this wrong, but www.dwp. divingwithapurpose.com. So definitely .org. Definitely checking out our website is where you can find a lot of information about how to get involved, how to donate, things like that.
Excellent, excellent. And we do have, if I'm looking aside, I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm monitoring some pretty fun chats here. And your mom, Rachel, is chimed in from all the way from Tennessee. so that's very cool. And Vanessa has a question for you, Rachel. A great question. Have you had any opportunities to mentor youth or even introduce youth to marine sanctuaries, especially youth that might be more underserved communities?
Well, fortunately, so to become an instructor with DWP, I had to kind of help lead other young divers and to complete the mission. So that was an amazing experience, being able to share all of my knowledge and share the basics of how to do what we do, the underwater archaeology, with other students. I have also been able to share my experiences just with friends, family, talking to other people. It is very rare if I'm just out in the world, that I meet someone that is a diver that looks like me. So I often get to share my experience just in conversation with other people. Just being able to speak, share, do the presentations. I've been able to do that to different groups in Tennessee, sharing what we do. So that is my way of being able to reach out to other people to let them know, here is an opportunity, but also here's the importance. Here are these national marine sanctuaries, these national parks that we all have access to or should have access to, that we all can go to. So it's nice that I'm able to do that.
It's wonderful that you're able to do that. And that was very well said, that we all have access to these protected areas, to these special places in our country. We might all have access, but how do we make sure we all can access the access? Yeah. I guess I don't know how to say that better, but yes, really well said. And I'm definitely inspired by the work that you guys do and that Diving with a Purpose does for sure. So I'm talking about Diving with a Purpose. What do you see? I know this year or last year was a challenge, of course, but what is on the horizon? I'll let you start this answer, Jay. What's on the horizon for Diving with a Purpose? And maybe different sanctuaries to visit, different shipwrecks to document. What's up next?
Yes, thank you for asking that question, Steph. We have a really exciting year planned, and hopefully through the public health situation will resolve, and we will be in full swing this summer. So one of the things that we are we're planning our field schools in the Florida Keys Sanctuary, both for the adults and the youth, both YDWP and DWP. We are also expanding our coral reef program. It is the collective approach to restoring our ecosystem, which we actually, with this program, this coral reef program, we get more into identifying the diseases of coral, identifying, you know, the best location of which coral can grow, as well as restoring that coral. So we're looking forward to that expanding program. But one of the most exciting things that we are looking forward to is the dedication of a memorial to a Tuskegee Airman who perished in the lakes, the Great Lakes, specifically Port Huron. What most people don't know is that the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, great heroes, they were all African-American group within the Department of Army, and they were instrumental in World War II to help the Allied victory, of World War II. Well, during that time, there were race issues or race relations actually similar to today, in which at that point, the military was segregated. So the Tuskegee Airmen did their basic training in the great state of Alabama. But what most people don't know is that they did advanced training in the great state of Michigan. And during that time, there were training accidents. And and we have, along with Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Wayne Lasardi as the principal investigator, actually located and documented a aircraft in Port Huron that belonged to Second Lieutenant Frank H. Moody. So we are actually having a dedication ceremony of a memorial dedicated to all the Tuskegee Airmen that perished in training accidents in the great state of Michigan, and of which there were 14 Tuskegee Airmen that perished in training accidents. So we're really excited about that.
Yes, and I'm really excited to be hosting. The film festival is hosting another live stream with Diving with a Purpose and some other amazing guests on January 28th. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be outstanding, especially if you're interested in the Tuskegee experience here in the Great Lakes. Ernie, we have a question for you about the Diving with a Purpose work in Mozambique and trying to discover and document and preserve lost slave ships.
Oh, that diving in Mozambique, we as a group, Jay, myself, Kamal, and some other partners had the opportunity to go to Mozambique. As far as my part was, I was over there to help Jay. We trained some young Mozambicans to get them certified as scuba divers. And the reason for that was because there are some possible slave ships around the island of Mozambique. Well, there are some slave ships around the island of Mozambique. And because those are cultural heritage sites, we went over to support the Mozambicans over there as far as training them, so that they could become basically community monitors. They've got two groups of young people they call monitors. They've got terrestrial community monitors, and they also have maritime community monitors. What my task was, as far as going over there, which was a fantastic experience, was to go help train them. And I learned a lot. You know, it was a shared cultural experience, not only for myself, but for some of the young Mozambican people, young folks that we worked with over there. If you want to know more about the slave project on there, I would have to defer to Jay, because I was basically a support person, and my experience was so gratifying as far as that documentation. What I did is I just trained them so that they could go document their own ships. They could have a say in, in their own heritage. So they could tell their own story. They've got a great museum there, and they're looking for artifacts, searching for relics there. And we just went over to support them.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, our work in Mozambique is another shining example of a great partnership. Diving with the Purpose is a global partner of a larger collaborative called the Slave Wrecks Project. And the Slave Wrecks Project is a global collaborative that dedicated to the research, documentation, and preservation of ships that are involved in the global slave trade. So the the global partners within this collective includes the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Park Service Submerged Heritage Resources, Diving with the Purpose, the George Washington University, and Ezekiel Museums of South Africa. If you would think the Smithsonian Institute of South Africa, that would be kind of the analogous. And we do work in 5 operating theaters: Mozambique, Cape Town, South Africa, Senegal, Brazil, Cuba, and St. Croix. And our work in Mozambique is very, very unique because Mozambique Island in this particular area was literally kind of a central hub for the slave trade, both in the transatlantic slave trade and the trans-Indian Ocean slave trade. So there are over 20 ships that were involved in the global slave trade. And we are, as a collective, we are documenting them not only in the ocean, but there are some terrestrial sites that we are working on. And one other thing that I'd like to say that we're really excited about is there are, if you think about it, the transatlantic slave trade, there were approximately 12.5 million enslaved Africans that were actually transported from Africa, both East and West Coast of Africa, to the Americas, both North America and South America. And there's only been a handful of ships, probably about 5 to 6 ships that have been documented in terms of their ships being involved in that slave trade. So you can well imagine that 12.5 million people was not on all 5 of those ships. So there are a lot of ships, and we found the ship that originated in Mozambique and crashed in Cape Town on its before it was on its way to Brazil, and that ship is called the São José. And Diving with the Purpose, in collaboration with the Slave Wrecks Project, so the whole collaborative, we documented that ship, and it's a part of the inaugural exhibit at the National Museum of African American History and Culture here in Washington, D.C. So that's very exciting.
That is amazing, fascinating, and important history. And I am excited to continue to follow that story for sure. The great stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And there are films in the film festival about both of those topics, Tuskegee and the Slave Wrecks Project, but even more available out there to see. So if you're interested, do stay tuned for that. Remember the panel on the 28th, the films you can watch within the film festival program. So the history, the stories, the fascinating stuff. But let's get back to the diving. Diving with a Purpose, that's in the title. So let's talk about the technology, the logistics, and maybe I'll ask Rachel. Rachel, what do you think is the most challenging thing about actually working and doing documentation and underwater archaeology underwater?
Mm-hmm. I would say for me, it has been honestly keeping up with the equipment that you need. So you have a pencil, you need a clipboard, something to write on, you need the paper to write on, you need rulers and tape measures and all these other equipment. So keeping up with the equipment and being organized, and you have to think about how you're going to deal with the equipment, because if you float away, if something floats away, that's on you. If you lose a piece of documentation, then that's people are not going to be happy about losing your documentation. You may have to swim back and look for it or swim back to shore if you lose any of your documentation that you've taken. So I would say for me has been the hardest. And also communicating underwater. You can't talk. You have a buddy, you have a section of a wreck that you're supposed to be responsible for mapping, and you have a buddy that you need to work with in order to do that. You can't talk underwater. So you have to be very in tune with your buddy to be able to accomplish their task. So that means coming up with certain hand signals. Yeah, figuring out other ways to communicate without speaking underwater is pretty challenging too.
It is. And then when you come dive in Thunder Bay, because I'm just assuming you're all coming back to dive in Thunder Bay, Rachel, for the first time, you add the cold water gear that you have to wear, the exposure protection and the big dry suits. And yes, so speaking of documentation, oh yes, the gloves. Yes, and then your fingers are all fat and it's hard to do anything. But speaking of documentation, I think Jay has a really cool archaeological site map that he can share and show some of the products, or one of the products that Diving with a Purpose can and does produce. And it's not just a pretty picture. These are actual archaeological tools that agencies like marine sanctuaries and the National Park Service use to document and then to monitor changes within archaeological sites. So Jay, tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Okay, this is what is called a composite site map. And this is site map was done in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and it's of the wreck called the Hannah M. Bell shipwreck. It is over 250 feet in length, and it actually has what we call some relief, meaning that there is portions of the ship that actually protrude up from the ocean floor into the water column. And so what you see here is the results of the work of actually 2 field seasons. We had a field team that comprised of 6 people. And then about 2 years later, we had an entire team of over 24 people that actually did this, did the map and the measurements. Now, one thing that I think it's important to note is that at the end of this week, at the end of the week of the field school, this is not produced. Now, the data is produced and then it's given to a cartographer, and she actually takes all of the documentation, all the drawings, and then she translates them in a digital form on the computer. As a matter of fact, Gail Patrick is our cartographer, and she is wonderful. She is a retired architect. And so it kind of gives you that same thing. If you start to see how detailed these are, the value of having being detailed oriented is you can start to see that in the drawing.
That's an impressive drawing, and those are definitely useful management tools. So Diving with a Purpose truly is a citizen science group. So out there actually doing science that contributes to the field of maritime archaeology. We have another question here from our audience. Faith Ortons wants to know if you've used photogrammetry to map the shipwrecks. And I'm going to let you guys decide who can answer that. And while you're answering, please let our audience know what photogrammetry is.
I'll take that one. Faith, how you doing, Faith? Thank you for your question. We are starting photogrammetry right now. Within the last 18 months, we have been working on photogrammetry. And now, what for our listening audience, what photogrammetry is actual pictures, many pictures of the wreck site, and it's taken if you can imagine floating over a wreck, and you're taking a picture every 5 seconds. And then what happens is all the images are placed together like a jigsaw puzzle. All right, and that gives the archaeologists a good what we call visual representation along with the map and the detailed drawings of that shipwreck. So you can start to understand the status of the shipwreck. Is it stable? Is it not? What are some of the things that are necessary to preserve that shipwreck? So photogrammetry is starting to be an emerging tool in maritime archaeology. So Faith, thank you for that question.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm going to stop sharing your screen,
Good.
Jay, because I want to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing another image that we had on in the very beginning of one of our colleagues in diving and with Diving with a Purpose, Melody Garrett, who's awesome. And this is a photo by Matt Lawrence, who's an underwater archaeologist at Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. And if we could show that photo, and then Ernie, tell us a little bit about what exactly Melody is doing in this picture.
Right now, Melanie is taking, she's doing some measurements from the end of that relief. That's the relief that Jay was talking about. You see how it sits up below, up above the site, and over to the left, you'll see some other divers down there at the bottom. If I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the picture, okay? And Melanie is getting a measurement, what they call a trilateration measurement. That's coming, that's Kamal, I think, that's swimming back to the baseline. Down in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a diver in yellow. You'll see a tri-stake there. That is the end of the baseline, and Melanie is holding the end of the tape measure while Kamal goes back. And what he's going to do is he's going to take 2 measurements off of that. That looks like it's probably going to be the first measurement, but this is how they document the size and the location of the wreck here. So that's what Melody is doing, and that's another one of the challenges that Rachel was talking about. Not only do you have to keep up with everything, but sometimes you get what they call surges in the water, where the ocean will take you away from something that you're working on. But the good thing about a surge is when it takes you out, it always brings you back to that spot. So you have to really have good buoyancy, and you have to have patience down there. A lot of those wrecks are not that deep because they're around the Florida Keys. Back in the old days when they didn't have GPSs, some of the captains would try to steer as close as they could to the shoreline, and ended up running aground. And when they run aground, they damage the coral. But anyway, yes, that is what Melanie's doing right there.
Excellent, excellent. I think it's helpful to have the image to, point out the tools and point out the activities that we all do underwater when documenting these shipwrecks. So we have a few minutes left, and there's a couple things I wanted to ask. What National Marine Sanctuaries do you look, and we talked a lot about sanctuaries, always got to bring them back to National Marine Sanctuaries, particularly Thunder Bay. But where do you want to go? What sites haven't you visited that you are dreaming of visiting? What National Marine Sanctuary would you love to visit? And how about you, Rachel? I'll ask you, and then I'll let Jay and Ernie answer.
I would like to see some on the West Coast. So maybe Channel Islands, Monterey Bay, I'm not gonna say it, the one in Hawaii. I'm not even gonna try and say it.
Papahānaumokuākea.
Yes. I think those are top 3, and I think there's one in Washington as well, though. So yeah, along the West Coast.
That's those. Excellent. Jay, where's your dream sanctuary that you haven't visited yet? Oh, we can't hear you, Jay.
I said, yes, Rachel hit the greatest hits. That's absolutely true. But I want to get back to the flower gardens and Gray's Reef. And then also a great friend, Tane, and the Monitor. The Monitor recently expanded its boundaries. And so I'm very interested to hit those. So in essence, I would like to go to all of them, particularly the West Coast. I want to spend some more time on the West Coast and in Hawaii. So those are my favorite ones and my priorities.
I forgot to say, and also Thunder Bay. I have not been to Thunder Bay. I need to come to Thunder Bay.
We're waiting for you, Rachel. Okay, Ernie, where do you want to go next?
Really, the flower gardens is one I haven't been to yet. I'd love to go there. I've heard a lot about it. And really, and I'm not saying this just because of Shoe Stephanie. I want to get back to Thunder Bay because there are a lot of wrecks there that because of the conditions, I really want to go there and take pictures because that's an outstanding place.
Excellent.
That's it.
Well,
Hawaii,
you are welcome.
Hawaii is a long boat ride, but I can
It
probably
is.
like that one too. But
Well,
mainly,
you are all welcome anytime. The water's open. The visitor center unfortunately was closed last year, but the sanctuary waters are always open, and we have some, like you said, amazing sites to visit. Before my last question, I do want to remind our audience that we have another outstanding live panel on January 28th. Please tune in for that. That's free. And please check out the full festival. Many films to watch. Many of them, the Great Lakes content, are free to watch. All the live streams are free to watch. And then there's the latest and greatest in ocean filmmaking. And your ticket price does support the Friends of Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which helps our education and research programs. So the last question, and then we'll have a couple minutes if you guys have last thoughts. But starting with Jay, can you tell me where you see DWP, Diving with a Purpose, in 20, 25 years? What do you see the future of this amazing program?
We are an international organization, and I see in 25 years for our outreach to be really global in terms of having permanent locations in different parts of the globe. And in 25 years, I am looking forward to Rachel Stewart being the chairman of the board of Diving with a Purpose and instructing young folk and leading them into the field of an ocean career.
Oh, what a great answer. That's very inspiring. Well, as we're wrapping up our time here, do you guys have any last thoughts? I do have actually one last question. If somebody wanted to support, they didn't want to get in the water, but maybe they would still like to support Diving with a Purpose, where can you direct them?
You can go to the website, www.divingwithapurpose.org. Your financial support is greatly appreciated to help our existing and expanding programs. You can also like us on Facebook and the social media and join our Facebook family. But most importantly, I think is as adults, tell other adults, and adults tell young people about Diving with a Purpose and the programs, and see if they're interested in it, because we are people like Rachel are our future, and it's important that young people get involved. And so tell a young person about Diving with a Purpose. Tell a young person about maritime archaeology and coral reef restoration, and see if they get excited about it, and then point them in our direction. Call Rachel, and Rachel will mentor them.
That's great. The future is our youth, and after talking with Rachel tonight, and I'm sure the audience agrees, I feel really good about our future. So, Ernie, did you have any last thoughts?
No, other than piggybacking on what Jay was saying about, and you asking about in 25 years, I, like him, I'm looking forward to a lot more young people that we have the opportunity to reach out and touch, to tell other young people and to become better stewards and more productive in this environment. In 25 years since we are global and international, there was one question here someone asked about, were there any activities going on in the UK? not as I know of right now, but there's some possibilities because there was just a documentary done, and part of it was done in the UK. Samuel L. Jackson did a eight episode documentary called Enslaved. He monitored that, and it took it tracked the slave trade going from Europe to Africa to the States and back around, that triangle. So there's a good possibility. If you guys over there in the UK got any interest, drop us a line. And we'll make some kind of a connection over there because there's a lot to do and we need more people to get it done, especially young people. Young people.
Right. And Rachel, I'd like to offer you the floor to share any last thoughts.
I think we've covered a lot of it. Yes, still just very glad to be able to share our experiences with you all. So thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thank you everyone for tuning in. We had a great lively audience out there. Really exciting to hear where people were chiming in from. Tell your friends that it is recorded, and so we'll be able to share it through January 31st, the end of the festival. And thank you so much to the Diving with a Purpose organization, to my friends Jay and Ernie, and my new friend Rachel. It's been such a pleasure to have you on tonight and a part of the festival. And I look forward to when we're diving in Thunder Bay again. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care now.